You asked an important question at the top. How do we fix this?
Yeah.
Well, what did I say about the stimulus checks? Stimulus checks have 80% approval rating. So that's the type of thing, if I was Joe Biden and I wanted to actually heal this country, that's the very first thing I would have done when I came into office. Same thing on when you look at anything that's going to increase wages. I said on the show, I was like, look, I think Joe Biden will have an 80% approval rating if he does two things. If he gives every American a $2,000 stimulus check and gives everybody who wants a vaccine. That's it. It's pretty simple. Because here's the thing. I don't really like Greg Abbott that much. We have like very different politics. I'm from Texas, but my parents got vaccinated really quickly. That means something to me. I'm like, listen, I don't really care about a lot of the other stuff. He got my family vaccinated. Like that, well, I will forever remember that. And that's how we will remember the checks. This is a part of a reason why Trump almost won the election, and why if the Republicans had been smart enough to give him another round of checks, 100% would have won, which is that people were like, look, I don't really like Trump, but I got a check with his name on it. And that meant something to me and my family. I'm not saying for all the libertarians out there that you should go and like endlessly spend money and buy votes.
Mm-hmm.
What I am saying is lean into the majoritarian positions without adding your culture war bullshit on top of it.
Yeah.
So for example, what's the number one concern that AOC says after the first round of checks got out? Oh, the checks didn't go to illegal immigrants. I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, this is the most popular policy America has probably done in 50 years, since like Medicare. And you're ruining it.
Yeah.
And then on the right is the same thing, which is that they'll be like, these checks are going to like, low level, blah, blah, people who are lazy and don't work. I'm like, oh, there you go. Like you're just playing a caricature of what you are. Like if you lean into those issues, and you got to do it clean. This is what everybody hates about DC, which is that Biden right now is doing the $1,400 checks, but he's looping it in with his COVID relief bill and all that. That's his prerogative. That's the Democrats' prerogative. They won the election. That's fine. But I'll tell you what I would have done if I was him. I would have come in and I would have said there's 5 United States senators who are on the record, Republicans, who say they'll vote for a $2,000 check. And I would put that on the floor of the United States Senate on my, the first day possible. And I would have passed it, and I would have forced those Republican senators to live up to that. Vote for this bill, come to the Oval Office for a signing, so that the very first thing of my presidency was to say, I'm giving you all this relief check. This long national nightmare is over. Take this money. Do with it what you need. We've all suffered together. The thing about Biden is he has a portrait of FDR in the Oval, which kind of bothers me because he thinks of himself as an FDR-like figure. But you have to understand the majesty of FDR. We're talking about a person who passed a piece of legislation 5 days after he became president, and he passed 15 transformative pieces of legislation in the first 100 days. We're on day like 34, 35, and nothing has passed. The reconciliation bill will eventually become law, but it'll become law with no Republican votes. And again, that's fine. But it's not fulfilling that legacy and the urgency of the action. And the mandate, which I believe that history has handed it to Trump, and he fucked it up, right? He totally screwed it up. He could have remade America and made us into the greatest country ever coming out on the other side of this. He decided not to do that. I think Biden was again handed that, like a scepter almost. It's like all you have to do, all America wants is for you to raise it up high. Yeah. But he's keeping it within the realm of traditional politics. I think it's a huge mistake.
Why? So this is, everything you're saying makes perfect sense. Like
yeah.
Okay. It's like, again, if the aliens showed up, it's like the obvious thing to do is like, what's the popular thing? Like 80% of Americans support this. Like do that clean. Also do it like with like grace, where you're able to bring people together, not like in a political way, but like obvious common sense way. Like just people, the Republicans and Democrats, just bring them together on a policy and like bold, just hammer it without the dirt, without the mess, whatever, try to compromise, just yell have a good Twitter account, like loud, very clear. We're going to give a $2,000 stimulus check anyone who wants a vaccine gets a vaccine at scale. Let's make America great again by manufacturing. Like, we are manufacturing most of the world's vaccine because we're bad motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And without maybe with more eloquence than that, and just do that. Why haven't we seen that for several presidencies?
Because of coalitional politics, and they owe something to somebody else. For example, Biden has got a lot of the Democratic constituency he has to satisfy within this bill. So there's going to be a lot of shit that goes in there, state and local aid, all this stuff. Again, I'm not even saying this is bad, but he's like, his theory is, and this isn't wrong, is like, we're going to take the really popular stuff and use it as cover for the more downwardly less popular. And so the Dems could face the accusation. The people who are on this side, this is their pushback to me. They're like, why would we give away the most popular thing in the bill and then we would never be able to pass state and local aid, right? Why would we do that? And then the Republicans do the same thing, right? Like Mitch McConnell, because he's a fucking idiot, decided to say, we're going to pair these $2,000 stimulus checks with like Section 230 repeal. And it was like, oh, it's obviously dead, right? Like, it's not going to happen together. That's largely why I believe Trump lost the election and why those races down in Georgia went the way that they did. Obviously, Trump had something to do with it. But the reason why is they have long-standing things that they've wanted to get done. And in the words of Rahm Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste and try and get as much as you possibly can done within a single bill. My counter would be this. Things have worked this way for too long, which is that the reconciliation bill is almost certainly going to be the only large signature legislative accomplishment of the Biden presidency. That's just how American politics works. Maybe he gets one more. Maybe one. He gets a second reconciliation bill. Then you're running for midterms. It's over. I believe that by trying to change the paradigm of our politics, leaning into exactly what I'm talking here, you could possibly transcend that to a new one. And I'm not naive. I think people respond to political pressures. And the way that we found this out was David Perdue, who is just a total corporate, Dollar General CEO guy. He was against the original $1,200 stimulus checks. But then Trump came out, who's the single most popular figure in the Republican Party. He's like, I want $2,000 stimulus checks. And all of a sudden, Perdue running in Georgia is like, yeah, I'm with President Trump. I want a $2,000 stimulus check. That was, if you're an astute observer of politics, to say, you can see there that you can force people to do the right thing because it's the popular thing. And that if it's clean, if you don't give them any other excuse, they have to do it.
Yep.
So this is what we've been gaslit into our culture war framework of politics. And the reason it feels so broken and awful is because it is, but there is a way out. It's just that nobody wants to be, it's a game of chicken, right? Because maybe it is true. Maybe we would never be able to get your other Democratic priorities or your Republican priorities. But I think that the country understands that this is fucking terrible and would be willing to support somebody who does it differently. There's just a lot of disincentives to not there's a lot of incentives to not stray from the traditional path.
Yeah. Is it also possible that the A students are not participating? Like, we drove all of the superstars away from politics. So like, you just
I've
have
heard this argument before.
I mean, everything you're saying sort of rings true. Like, this is the obvious thing to do. As a student of history, you can almost like tell, like, if you look at great people in history, this is what great leaders in history, this is what they did. It's like clean, bold action. Sometimes facing crisis, but we're facing a crisis.
No,
right
we're
now.
in a crisis.
We've been
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't we see those leaders step up? I mean, you say that's kind of like, it makes sense. There's a lot of different interests at play.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to risk too many things, so on and so forth. But that sounds like the C students.
I don't think it's that. I think it's that the pipeline of politician creation is just totally broken from beginning to end. So it's not that A students don't want to be politicians. It's basically the way that our current primary system is constructed is what is the greatest threat to you as a member of Congress? It's not losing your reelection. It's losing your primary, right? So that means, especially in a safe district, you're most concerned about being hit if you're a Republican from the right and if you're a Democrat from the left for not being a good enough one.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what stops people, more heterodox people in particular, from winning primaries, because the people who vote in our primaries are the party faithful. That's how you get the production. It's important to understand the production pipeline, which is that, all right, I'm from Texas, so that's what I know best. So it's like, if you think in Texas, if you're a more heterodox, like state legislature or something who's works with the left on this and does that, you're going to get your ass beat in a Republican primary because they're going to be like, he worked with the left to do this, blah, blah, take it out of context, and you're screwed. Mm-hmm. And then that means you never ascend up the next level of the ladder, and then so on and so forth all the way. But I do think Trump changed everything. This is why I have some hope, which is that he showed me that all the people I listened to were totally wrong about politics. And that's the most valuable lesson you could ever teach me, which was, I was like, wait, I don't have to listen to these people. I'm like, they don't know anything, actually. You know?
Yeah,
that's powerful, man. Yeah. I'm like, he did it.
That's exceptionally powerful.
This guy.
Even if he didn't do anything with it,
it doesn't matter, right?
He showed that it's possible.
Exactly.
And that means a lot. That mean you're absolutely right. There's young people right now that kind of turn around and like, huh.
You're like, wait, I don't have to comb my hair a certain way and go to law school and be an asshole who everybody knows is an asshole.
Yeah.
And then get elected to state legislature. I mean, look, who's the number one person in the New York City primary right now? Andrew Yang. He's polling higher than everybody else in the race. Look, maybe the polls are totally fucked, and maybe he'll lose because of ranked choice voting and all of that. But I consider Andrew, I mean, I know him a little bit, and I've followed his candidacy from the very beginning. I consider him an inspiration. He's the new generation of politics. Like, if I see who's going to be president 20 years from now, it's going to be, I'm not saying it's going to be Andrew Yang. I think it's going to be somebody like Andrew Yang, outside the political system, who talks in a totally different way, right? Just a completely, one of my favorite things that he said on the debate stage, he's like, look at us, we're all wearing makeup. It's crazy,
Yeah.
And he brought that, and he's right, like, yeah, why are they're all wearing makeup?
He probably, arguably, hasn't gone far enough almost, because, but he showed that it's possible. And then you see other, like AOC is a good example of somebody, at least in my opinion, is doing the same kind of thing, but going too far. In like, well, I don't know. She's doing the Trump thing, but on the other side. So I don't know. What's too far? Who knows?
Don't take a normative judgment of it.
Yeah.
I will tell you the future of politics looks
appreciate
like
the art of it.
Right? No, I do. Look, I'm not a big AOC fan, but she's a genius, media genius, once in a generation talent. The way that she uses social media, Instagram, and everybody on the right is like trying to copy her. Like Matt Gaetz is like, I want to be the conservative AOC. I'm like, it's just not going to happen, dude. Like you just don't have it. Like what she has, it's like, it's electric. And Trump had that. Like I've been to a Trump rally, like to cover as a journalist, there's nothing like it in America. Well, and Yang is similar. It's the same way where you're like, there is something going on here, which is just like, I've been to an Obama rally. I've been to a Clinton rally. I've been to several normal it's fine, With Trump and with Yang, it's another world.
Yeah,
it's another world.
Yang gang. Yeah. There's probably thousands of people listening right now who are just like doing a slow clap. Yes,
I know.
Yang gang, forever. Okay, but I mean, my worst fear. I prefer Andrew Yang kind of free. Improvisational idea exchange, all that, versus AOC, who I think no matter what she stands for is a drama machine, creates dramas just like Trump does. I would say my worst fear would be in 2024. Is AOC old enough? It'd be AOC versus Trump.
I don't think she's old enough. I think it'd have to be, I think she's 30, so she needs 5 more years, so probably not. Yeah.
Okay, but that kind of, that's, or Trump Jr.
Well, AOC probably wouldn't win a Democratic primary. So, I mean, look, Joe Biden is,
so
they pretty much showed that.
That's exactly what you're saying. This process grooms you over time. You see the same thing in academia, actually, which is very interesting. is the process of getting tenure. There's this, it's like you're being taught without explicitly being taught
Yes.
to behave in the way that everybody's behaved before. I've heard this. It was funny. I've had a few conversations that were deeply disappointing, which involved statements like, "This is what's good for your career."
Yes.
This kind of conversation, almost like mentor to mentee conversation, where it's, you know, it's like there's a grooming process in the same way. I guess you're saying the primary process does the same kind of thing. So, I mean, that's what people have talked about with Andrew Yang. It was he was being suppressed by a bunch of different forces, the mainstream media, and all. Just the democratic, just that whole process didn't like the honesty that he was showing, right?
For now. But here's my question to you. People got to see. Look, Jordan Peterson is one of the most famous people in America, right? Like, you have a massive podcast. You're more famous than 99% of the people at MIT. So, like, from that perspective, everything has changed. And somewhere out there, there's a student who's taking notice. Yeah. And I've noticed that with my own career, everybody thought I was crazy for doing this show with Crystal, The Hill. They thought it was nuts. They're like, what are you doing? You're a White House correspondent. You've got a job forever. The other job offer I had was being a White House correspondent. And people thought I was nuts for not just sticking there and, you know, aging out within Washington, pining for appearances on Fox News and CNN and MSNBC. But I hated it. I just hated doing it. And I did not want to be a company man, like a Washington man, who's one of those guys who like brags to his friends about how many times he's been on Fox or whatever, mostly because I just have a rebellious streak and I hate being at the subject of other people. I created something new, which a lot of people watch to get their news. And I notice that younger people, who are almost all my audience, they don't really look up to any of the people in traditional, right? They don't go and they're not coming up and being like, how do I be like Jim Acosta? You know, they're like, hey, how did you do what you do? And the way you did it is by bucking the system. Yeah. So I think that we are at a total split point. And look, there will always be a path for people, because like, I don't want people to overlearn this lesson. I have people who are like, I'm not going to go to college. And I'm like, well, just wait. Yeah. I'm like, just.
I'm starting a podcast.
Yeah, like stop. Just hold on a second. But there will always be a path for the institutional. That will always be there for you. But now there's something else. Now there's another game in town. And that's more appealing to millions and millions and millions and millions of people who feel unserved by the corporate media, CNN, and these people, possibly who feel unserved in the faculty. Like, if you are an up-and-comer who wants to teach as many young people as possible, I think you should be on YouTube. Right? Like, look at the Khan Academy guy. That guy created a huge business. So I just think we can be cynical and like upset about what that system is, but we should also have hope. Like, I have a lot of hope for what can be in the future. Yeah,
there's a guy people should check out. So my story is a little bit different because I basically stepped aside with the dream of being an entrepreneur earlier in the pipeline than like a legitimate like senior faculty would. There's an example, somebody people should check out, Andrew Huberman from Stanford, who's a neuroscientist, who's as world-class as it gets in terms of like tenure faculty, just a really world-class researcher. And now he's doing YouTube. And
I see him on Instagram. Yeah.
And he's great. So he switched. So he not just does Instagram, he now has a podcast, and he's changing the nature of like, I believe that Andrew might be the future of Stanford. And for a lot, it's funny, like he's basically, Joe Rogan is an inspiration to Andrew and to me as well. And those ripple effects, and Andrew is an inspiration probably, just like you're saying, to these young, like 25-year-olds who are soon to become faculty, if we're just talking about academia. And the same is probably happening with government. Is funny enough, Trump probably is inspiring a huge number of people who are saying, wait a minute, I don't have to play by the rules.
Exactly.
And I can think outside the box here. And you're right. And the institutions we're seeing are just probably lagging behind. So the optimistic view is the future is going to be full of exciting new ideas. So Andrew Yang is just kind of the beginning of this whole thing.
He's tip of the iceberg.